So the question becomes like, you know, how we can have more of the skilly stuff go into MCP, which is going to be more, UI forward in the likes of ChatGPT and Claude, and how much of this of this MCP app technology and approach shows up, right, in the way we start working with these, other agentic, platforms like Codex, like OpenClaw, and whatever comes up next, because there'll be yet another platform we're talking about next week, because that's how fast this whole thing keeps on moving. And so it's a little bit less being tied to like how do you do this specific thing with the technology, and more what is the pattern we're trying to understand, and a pattern both in terms of the technology, the way technology is going to interact with this stuff, but also the pattern in terms of user experience and what we think is going to be the gold standard for helping people be able to make, better decisions to guide these, machines that are working for us.
Hmm. That's very true. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think there's a lot of, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of the stuff that people have kind of come up with in terms of generative AI, sorry, generative UI, go working with MCP apps would be relevant for what some of what OpenClaw needs to do. And then thinking about what the interface is likely to be is going to be it's going to be interesting to do. Should we talk a little bit about? Oh, sorry, JC, you
I
want
was
to
gonna say
say
because
something?
I mean this is really um, yeah, really interesting, and I'm thinking to your previous points of how OpenAI's attention has maybe diverted from the ChatGPT apps towards this new agentic scene that is happening today. So what maybe my question would be, how do you think everything that's happening with like OpenClaw and other agentic tools, like how is that affecting probably maybe OpenAI's focus right now? If you think I hear that maybe what you think is that OpenAI is now the focus is now less on ChatGPT app because there's this whole other thing that is happening, right? That they need to basically attend to. So what do you think is going to happen there? Like, uh, might it affect how GPT apps are, or might it just like um, blow them out of the platform, and it becomes like another, like a custom GPT case or anything else? I'm trying to understand a bit more how to join or how to link all these threads together.
Of course. Of course. What do you think, Ray?
I think that OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google are in a death match, right? They're all in the race for what is going to give them, dominance and justify their huge valuations, right? And be able to get lots and lots of money in terms of the cash flows to get people coming in. That's hopefully going to be in excess of their costs, which are also ballooning. The fact that it's competitive is like driving down their margins on tokens, right? And probably we're all benefiting from probably paying less than the cost of tokens, because that's where there's lots of venture capital money that's flowing into this. And the But at the same time, costs are going down. Costs might wind up actually going up in the relatively near term because of the war that's going on in the Middle East, which increases the cost of energy. And on the margin, token costs are energy costs, right? It costs money to go mint the chips, and then it takes energy to go run the chips. That's sort of that's the fixed cost, variable cost story here. And there's like software you're building in the middle, but eventually what you're really just doing is running energy. So these are like macro considerations for like what's going on with them. They're all on the race to superintelligence, right? They want to make the models that are actually what they call AGI. I'm not entirely sure what AGI is going to wind up meaning, right? But that's like a high level thing that they are looking to that all those majors are looking to do. And they are, they want to have, domination in their market. That's reason, like there's a recent thing in like the United States about the Department of Defense, having a bit of a tiff with Anthropic, and then Sam Altman and OpenAI goes right on in and like snaps up that contract because they're just all trying to go grab the money as quickly as they can on the belief that like you get these enterprise clients are less likely to shift. Although the fact that the federal government, the biggest of the enterprise clients, shifted the way that did maybe gives a little bit of lie to that. Um, that's a level at which these folks are playing. What is the point of the ChatGPT app? To give them more dominance, right, in whichever these fields are looking to play in. And when I look at this, like the way Microsoft is doing it makes a lot of sense to me because what they're doing is saying that your AI environment might not be the same as your AI environment, right? And that if I'm setting up two different environments for these big companies, right, and you need to have access to certain resources, there's just a lot of wisdom to that. Like A to A is a standard that, sort of got a lot of conversation early in 2025 and then kind of fell off the map. But I'll tell you, it was Microsoft that was keeping it alive because A to A is the way that Microsoft Teams talks to agents. And so I sort of credit Microsoft with sort of, putting one foot in front of another, of figuring out how to get this thing into the enterprise. Copilot in 2024 was like a lead balloon, and now they're actually making some good progress with it. They've got a good idea of how this integrates with Teams, which is smart because this really something owned in large enterprises that like small companies often just don't see. And now they're asking the question, how do we make this thing good for business? Smart play. That makes a lot of sense for, okay, we're going to onboard whatever app our clients want. And now the types of apps they're going to be interested in aren't going to be these little consumer apps. They're going to be much more business productivity, and even a lot of internal stuff that I think is going to be a very different kind of play. And that becomes important because MCPs are only useful if you have a limited number of them in your context. I mean, the way MCPs work is that they load instructions about how to use them in the context. That's kind of what makes it MCP as opposed to just being an API. Well, there's only so many tokens in the context window. You can't know about every single tool and how to use all those tools. So which ones are actually going to be things you're going to know about? And then there are the apps you've selected. I've decided I want to use these, right? And that's basically the way I use MCP right now. And then there's the apps that wants to be able to surface for you, the discoverable apps, which is something we've talked about before, which particularly in a B2C model becomes really important, right? Like that's where the digital marketing that comes in. But how do you bring that to the party? I don't know. And they're only going to be interested in it if they can see billions. So, like, what's going to help them play at the scale and that's going to make them win the kinds of deals they want? So, I think short term, I look at the way Microsoft is playing with MCP. I look at like the CLIs, for the more pointy end of the way this stuff gets used, which is like for developers or for high end business. That's where Cloud Cowork is. That's where Cloud Code is. That's where Codex is. That's the OpenAI tool. Anti Gravity, which is the Gemini tool. I'm seeing a lot of focus over there. Like, how do we get more people to buy more tokens through those? Right, and that's gonna be where they make a lot of money. And they're still all trying to figure out what does the consumer part look like because we have a whole lot of attention, but how do we elevate their experience such that one, they stick around more, and second, they bring more of their lives into this? And if you can meaningfully move that needle, they're going to get excited, and that's the kind of app they want to bring in. If you're like, I'm just trying to make my app, work with AI, they don't care, right? They care, are you going to help 100 million of their customers spend 3 times as much, either time or money or both, with ChatGPT or with Claude or whatever? If you can be bringing that kind of value, they are very excited and want to bring that in. And if you're not bringing that kind of value, why are we having the conversation? So I think it's sort of worth looking at from the point of view of like who are those other players in the ecosystem, like particularly like the ones who have the power right now. The three frontier labs, which are which are DeepMind at Google, Anthropic and OpenAI. What are their interests? And when you think about those business interests and keep aligned with those, that's going to be how you get that's going to be how you know which app you should be bringing to them, because those ones will get approved because that's going to be making everybody money.
Very interesting point. And in the end, it goes back to your point that you made before, which is, yeah, uh, if we think about ChatGPT apps, it's like the ChatGPT apps that get on the App Store, they need to make to help OpenAI make money. That's as simple as you put it before, and then I'm trying to think then again thinking just on the consumer side of ChatGPT apps. That something that I mentioned earlier, which is, I mean, to me, there's still a lot of gaps or barriers for OpenAI to make money through ChatGPT apps. So that makes me think that that's why we are seeing also that halt in ChatGPT apps getting published or promoted. Even like there's not that much fuss anymore. So yeah, I guess that there's some blockers today that need to go away for ChatGPT apps to help OpenAI make money. And until that those blockers are don't disappear, then I think we're gonna be looking at, yeah, this continued halt in the scene of ChatGPT apps. That's what I'm feeling. Maybe in a couple months, there will be like a comeback from ChatGPT apps, and where they just like unblocked like a whole ton of new things and features that allow you as a developer and also OpenAI to make money through the apps. Which, yeah, in the end, 2 points, all they need, right?
So,
I think for me, sorry, so you go,
oh,
Ben.
I was just going to say that I think that just as I was thinking about listening to JC, the word coming through my head was Uber. And I think we're looking for, and that's something I'm certainly thinking about a lot right now, is like, what is the Uber for this environment? Uber was an app, right? It was an iPhone app. Uber was not a service that could work for the iPhone,
Mm,
and it was a service that became very valuable because of properties that were intrinsic to the iPhone, right? Which is the network, the location awareness, right? It worked on both sides in terms of being able to do the hailing as well as being able to give the driver instructions, right? The mapping, the technology that was available made that work, and it
so,
also made the phone more
mm,
valuable. It was symbiotic, right? People would get and keep their phone partially to use Uber, right?
yeah.
And so like that is the kind of app and opportunity that drives it forward. And when you look at a lot of these apps that have been improved, it is apps that already exist. They're trying to extend themselves into, this environment. And we saw a lot of that like in the first generation of the App Store. Hey, people have a web service or whatever. We're going to go make an app out of it because we think we need to sort of have that territory. And there are lots of people who are making good money, doing that. But what's the Uber of this? What is the app? What is the business that becomes possible because of this environment that was impossible before, and that has that sort of symbiotic relationship where it's making money for that vendor and also making more money for the folks over at
Mm.
OpenAI. And like if you figure out what that kind of business model looks like, and you can really start to make a lot of money.
Yeah. So what
Great
is the
point.
Uber? That's what
Great point.
we're be looking for. What is the Uber of ChatGPT apps?
That's what we're trying to find. Yeah, that's what we're trying to find. It's, I don't think we've seen it yet.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Although I think it's going to be very interesting when, I mean, obviously, Peter, the founder of OpenClaw, is going to OpenAI. My expectation is he's going to pop up with something quite interesting relatively soon. I mean, the ability of the speed at which these sort of leading model companies are delivering functionality is pretty rapid because it's so easy to spin up stuff these days. So I'd be interested to see what they come up with him leading the thought process, which is interesting because he's particularly against MCP historically. So it may be something completely different.
But I also don't think we need to be stuck in MCP. I think that's the reason why I talk about patents versus technology.
True.
Like the opportunity of MCP, the thing that's most exciting to me about it, and the reason I've been making some MCP apps and having some good time with this, and we can also bring that into one of our episodes, is the is the way that we can communicate with customers, right? And the composability of it, like we've discussed before. Those patterns are what make it exciting, far more than the individual technology. which is why I'm particularly excited about, like, there's reason, Toby, why you call it encore design, right? Because it's going to be not so much about the individual technology, it's going to be about the way that you contact the human being. And I think they're going to be we may discover there's more than one technology that can do that, but the lessons of like what's the AI native way of doing this, and simultaneously the human native way of doing this is going to be I think the challenge. I think for a lot of people trying to make human facing software in the course of the next 180 days.
Yeah, no, that's really true. I mean, I think, and that's one of the things we need to be mindful of. You're absolutely right. Getting stuck in, it's not about technology. It's about how it helps people and what's the best way of doing things. And it's not necessarily, and that quite frequently changes. So it's a really good fair point.
Great. What a great discussion.
Very cool.
Uh, and I guess we left a couple open threads that we can get back to in future episodes and see how things evolve. But in the meantime, I thank you guys for your time again today, and see you in the next one.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, guys.